I love Ombute Devi here. Um, so last time, last post I did, I started a conversation about a touch, well, about tenderness, and then the conversation went into really a practice of touch to open up and awaken that sensual body, the senses. And and I stopped at a certain point, and then I realized that there's so much coming through after that in myself that really opened up a conversation, and I wanted to share that here as a sort of a follow-up to that because there's just so we'll see if I can come back and re-see these movements that was um, revealing themselves to me that I really feel has some validity, and I have had experiences in that myself. So one of the things, if you're not familiar with the previous post, it had to do with coming into awakening the senses to open up more vital flow in our own bodies, also to connecting on a deeper level with our loved ones, and also learning and not learning but remembering that nonlinear communication um, and through touch. Excuse me. And so there's so much there. For first of all, yeah. I want to just come back into the heart and open up the space to talk about it. So I'm just going to invoke the space and say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And I ask to surrender my ignorance and my arrogance for my deepest healing and my highest love. In connecting with this consciousness that we're all part of, and especially if you're watching me, following, listening, there's some kind of interest in what I'm sharing, then you're probably of the same flock. And navigating those internal landscapes through the dimensions and trying to embody some some a breath in that in those resonances. So I also want to clear any discords between us and the field, anybody that's listening, anyone that is coming through here, crossing paths, any discords from the past lives, future, and presence. Everything's in the presence, but I do say past, future, and future past. I clear any discords. I surrender any discords up to solution consciousness, love consciousness, for clearing and release, and to alchemize any inverted movements. Um, and also anything that is in the field here that is not of conditional love, unconditional love. Um, I will command that back into their to their source, not to come back, not to be part of this. And anyone and anything that is in support of unconditional love, you're welcome here. Ask for protection from my guides, my tribe, the higher self. And so it is. So, so touch, when we're talking about touch, um, a communication, because there's something about that coming in for me as well. And I've seen that. So one of the things was, yes, opening up your sensual body with practicing touch, seeing where how you want to be touched, where you want to be touched, for your purring to come on board, your current aliveness, The purring also helps to tone, helps to soothe the system. So it's a really beautiful way to self-care and receive support in the self-care and self nourishment, you know. Um, so I say self-nourishment, meaning that you are opening up um, access to your to vital flow. What I Okay, so we have that. There's another part of the communication. There's a lot of things in that, and it's important. Why is this important? Um, because it's showing is walking uh, us back into our core, our core frequency. And if you have watched the previous post, there's this real clear seeing about how we're supported, that there's so much uh, coming through and becoming accessible to support our unfolding and our awakening, supporting us, confirming us as we're coming into a new breath, as we're rewriting our own narratives, our own life narratives, as we're coming back into closer to our source, closer to these things like elementals, closer to our natural state, closer to our natural rhythm, closer to the connections of that sustains us. Um, and so we are then, it's we are creating this new narrative, this new world, so to speak. And we are doing it. We are doing it. Nobody else is doing it for us. Nobody's coming to help us or save us, but they're supporting because free will reigns. So this is the thing. We have been given free will. And so how we wield that free will is so important right now. So just to recap, what's happening is that where we are moving, the state that we are in on our everyday basis, the perspectives we are, using to in take in information, receive information, and then how we regurgitate it, um, and what we are creating. Are we contracting, or are we opening and letting flow come through us? Are we aligning ourselves in our own individual flow state, which opens up the life force in us, and it elevates our personal vibration for the goodness of our. And so we create when we have goodness on board, we create when we have relaxation on board, we create when we feel safe in our own sovereignty. These are the things that these soul beings coming into our awareness, coming into the field, they're so we're getting back up, so to speak, right? But it's sort of because a lot of us are awakening up to our own higher technology, really coming on board, embodying our own power. They're actually we have activated that support. It's kind of like thinking of the white blood cells in our immune system. Like something happens to trigger that to come on board. Like we do so many things for our health to trigger, the right epigenetics, the right white blood cells to activate and to do its thing, to help us get better, to destroy the things that are, not in support of our own well-being. These are these armies, the immune system that's doing that, but we have to activate it. If it's not working, and it becomes a lot of what we're sitting in sort of like autoimmune displays on so many levels, whether you have an autoimmune condition or you are diagnosis, or you just having expression of sort of these autoimmune conditions. There's an expression of it and it kind of looks like it, but it's not it. Like there are things that's not coming on board. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. We have mobilized um this consciousness, and more of these souls are coming in, these beings are coming in, which is part of this consciousness. So more of these souls are coming into existence via our engagement in our own goodness, elevating our own personal frequency, and create and rewriting our narrative as we move forward as a collective. And so why are these, activities, behaviors important? Because it is about awakening into the senses that we are. It is about awakening into these subtleties. It is about the moving from that dullness, the contraction, the stagnation, the stuckness into more aliveness and more aliveness and more aliveness. So that's why, the previous video we were talking about, like, what makes you purr, and the touch. So touch for me, so what is showing is that it's going to be really, really important, because we're also evolving our technology. So we got to wake up in our biology. And so, in the sense that we got to use it fully. So, when we talk about transcending, we have to descend into our deepest nooks and crannies of our senses and cognize, turn on the cognition and wake up the cognition in all these senses, making the subconscious really conscious on so many levels, so that we can then, that's the transcending, right? Like bringing that unconscious and subconscious up to consciousness in all our senses. And that's the transcendence. It's not like we are going to be, beamed up, Scotty, beam me up, Scotty. That's our subconscious asking, yeah, beam me up, so that you are becoming aware. Now, when we become more aware, we are more responsible. There's more things to be responsible for. So there's a level of maturity that is required, and that it has growing pains. Like when we mature, just like as children, maturity is directly related to growing pains, because how we mature is going through experiences that matures us. And so therefore there's growing pains involved. So a lot of us are going through growing pains, a lot of us, and it looks different for everyone. So going back again to the touch, because the touch, I wanted to just touch on touch. Because there's something about that is directly connected to how we are evolving this biology, our bodies, and that is conversation, the non-linear conversation, language, the non-linear language. That an example is, if you are an energy worker, a body worker, you know that there's a lot that comes through your hands, that is not coming through or led by your mental structure. It's a sense. You feel where your hands are going to go. You somehow just know how to hold space or hold a person or hold that particular limb or move in and out of that person's grid. The aura, the different fields, the different bodies, the different layers, right? So that you can feel and everything, and that whole landscape tells you, can give you stories, can tell you, so the body speaks through your that sense, so that's viable, that's real. And we know, so the more we do it, the more we strengthen that muscle. Now, so back again to how we move in our everyday life. When we feel an emotion and we're holding it, say for example, I am feeling sad, and I've been feeling sad, and I'm walking around and feeling sad, and I'm hanging out with my friends, or I'm doing something at work, but I have sadness, and it's kind of percolating, but I'm coping, I'm managing it. If someone that you have some connection with, and that you like or trust, that you're not, that you can feel relaxed with, if they touch you, if they physically touch you and just say, "Hey, how are you?" Most likely they're going to open up the body because of the touch. They're going to open up the body for feelings, and the sadness will come. The sadness will, and then you might start crying. You're holding yourself together, but then someone touches you, physically touch you. Now, if someone asks you, "How are you doing? How are you doing?" Depending on, the relationship and where you are with that, you might still start crying, or like, really, feeling those feelings. But the touch is non-negotiable. Sometimes we can't hold it back. So this is what, and this is a good thing, I'm saying. This is a good thing because we're not that numb. So some people are that numb, they have shoved their feelings so far deep, and we have on different levels, on different things. We've shoved so deep that doesn't matter who touches us, it's not going to erupt. But we want to get to a place where we're actually more porous and have integrity in how we move with that, so that we can learn a language of like sacred witnessing and reciprocity when we are moving around any place in our life, whether it's home, workplace, friends, so that we have a certain baseline of awakeness, and that we have start to learn how to communicate in a way that honors where we are, so that there's transparency, but also empowerment in that transparency, so that you can hold um, a place for you that you have established is appropriate, you know? Um, so I'm not saying that you're going to go to play, go walk around on in your everyday sort of rhythm and, be emotionally all over the place. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that you are tapped in and feeling what's running in you, so that that inner dialogue starts to come in and really be integral in the outer dialogue, so that the outer dialogue has a um, is connected to that inner dialogue in a positive way, in a sort of steward way, that you're stewarding that inner dialogue as well, and holding that also in consideration. It's like, if you're having a pet or a child around, and you're walking around, like you gotta, you're like, you during your day, you're considering them as well. every choice that you make, you're considering that as well. You're considering your pet, you're considering your children, you're considering your loved one if you're a caretaker. Like when you make decisions, you're considering all that too. Like what actions what am I going to take, and how are these actions going to affect the person, my pet, my child in this moment, right? Based on what they need and how it needed. And then it have to be relatable, within the context of the moment. So it has to be appropriate to the moment. And so and if it's not, then we learn how to, remove ourselves, right? In a way so we can keep our dignity. Um, and so touch, again, coming back to touch, the the communication that goes on is so important. If a person is talking and they're saying all kinds of things, like your loved ones or your friends can be telling you something that and then but then they touch you. If you ask, like, can you put your hand on me, touch me, and that it's very hard sometimes to lie. It's very hard to not be um, present when you're without someone knowing that you're not present. If you're touching someone, you feel it. You can feel if someone is just touching you, you can feel through that touch what's going on. Are they present? Are they not? Because your body is going to tell you, either it's going to feel not well, good, or it's going to feel okay. So there's all this communication that's happening already. And when we're talking about that really subtle sense of perception in our field, because our heart field is always perceiving, it's our strongest perceptive system in our being. But so sometimes we question that because we slap our mental structure on top of it and try to negotiate so much of our daily lives to sort of like get to what we want to get to sometimes. And we're not really understanding our own needs in a moment. But when we touch, the same way going back, if you're sad and you're having a conversation with your friends and you're trying to just, please this moment and be up and cheerful, yeah, that can be great. But if the primary inner state is sadness, and you're not honoring that in a way that is true to you, um, then because so much is sort of like you need to feel what you're feeling, and you need to create enough spaciousness to be able to hold it and still, make other choices independent of that. And that's another sort of way we talk about being strong enough to hold everything that's running. And I understand that as well. But in the context of touch and understanding how important it is with touch, that there's nonlinear communication, this really powerful communication that comes through touch. So here again, if you look at where people touch you, if they touch you on the shoulder, if it's different from if they touch you on the thigh, if they touch you on the outside of the thigh, if they touch you on the inside of the thigh, if someone touches your chest or your belly, this is every place has a different meaning and different depth. Because why? The closer you come into your core, the closer you come into the center body, the closer you're going to come in, right? This is your intimate feelings. These are your intimate feelings. These are your intimacy. These are like the house, this is our inner temple sort of thing. So when people come closer and touch it, it is not appropriate, right, for people to do that unless it is consensual and you know them and you trust them and whatever, or if there's, or you're with a practitioner or a doctor or whatever, there's consensus to it, and there's because there's an intention for helping and being supportive. But if someone just came up and like did this on you and like, hey, how are you? That's how you shook your hand, like, how are you? Let me feel your heart. That that's like okay. And if we go on retreats and you do those practices, getting to know each other, like eye gazing, and then each other like holding each other's, touching each other's heart and feeling each other's heart. Those are extremely intimate practices. And there's times when we do them without actually knowing that they're triggering us. Because if we haven't been in that kind of relation with anyone for a long time, and we have strangers doing it with us, and we can feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, but it opens up things that we have to then hold and meet and acknowledge. And most times when that happens, if it's unexpected and we haven't done that kind of work, we can contract and recoil. And then if we don't know how to hold that, we sometimes just project that pain or that fear or that contraction onto whoever's around us, or a facilitator that's, walking us into this practice or whatever. So it's about ownership and knowing how powerful it is with touch, and knowing that depending on who's touching you, where they're touching you, and knowing the body and knowing where they are in the zone, right? Where it could be going from a support, and a gentle just connection to violation, right? And a lot of people that are unconscious or carry a lot of trauma and don't have boundaries, let people touch them all over the place. And I know this. I know this. Um, uh, you know, uh, and are starting to turn off, are so turned off until they start waking up into deeper feelings. And then when someone touched them in places that are not appropriate, they actually have a different reaction. So for 30 years or more, I have been a hands-on practitioner, and I know this practice when I start working with people and laying hands on people, and things start changing, and there's more unconscious material coming up to consciousness to be digested and processed. Then touch becomes different, how you perceive it. And so if you're turned off and you don't have that connection with your body, and you're touched in places where you're not connected to it, it doesn't matter. And then you start to, especially nowadays when we are being thrusted into particular states and atmospheres right now, where we are spontaneously awakening up to senses that we have maybe not been awake to for a while. And so all of a sudden, we might not like how even our loved ones touch us, or some things feel off. And just know that this is part of it. Just know that this is a things, these are a process. This is an evolutionary process. This is like what I talk about. This is our growing pains we are going through. Like returning back to sacred touch can be a huge growing pain learning experience and maturation phase for so many. But we have to understand that sacred touch, if we say that, I mean, I say that as if, because it's used in the spiritual community a lot. Sacred touch. Touch is touch. Touch is communication. Touch is when we are sitting in our own sovereign heart, connected to everything that holds us together, um, and we feel the oneness of each other. We Boundaries are a natural occurrence. We can listen and hear the when it's consensual or not, because we can feel it. We can feel a yes, we can feel a no, we can feel it like a little bit closer, but here you just have to stop. We can feel all that. It's communication because our spidey's become really clear and large and on board for us. And so, because we are coming into, when people say, I have seen my future self and I'm in this translucent being, and it's kind of like a jellyfish. You just see all these lights going up and down and up and down and up and down, and we communicate not with words, but we can, it's telepathy. We can hear each other uh, in our thoughts. We can hear each other speaking. We can hear, and it's through emotions. We can feel each other's emotions. We can affect each other's emotions. I can amplify an emotion from that you have, and you can amplify an emotion that I have. And I can also bring an emotion, like regulate, right, and train emotions. And we entrain our nervous system and our heart rhythms and train each other all the time. But when we do it consciously, emotionally, this is where we are going. We are going into a place where the very subtleties of our existence become like magnified, and if we are conscious aware, if we are aware of it, we then use that experience and that awareness to then create, to write a new narrative that's going to incorporate all that we have experienced so far as, beautiful mammals that have feelings and thoughts and desires and these bodies. And we're like waking up. When we talk waking up, we're just opening up more intelligence, and we are using our what we know as far as our how important our breath is, to just open up and breathe more of ourselves into these bodies, and bringing, when we talk about bringing light, bringing that this data into the body, running through the heart. And so when it runs through our feeling body, emotional body, it becomes relevant, and to what we desire, what we feel is important, what the love that we are sitting in, that we are experiencing in this time as we are now. Um, and that is what's important, because and we have to, and being connected to nature, so that there is a complete circuit, so that it's relevant to everyone's well-being. So there's a fundamental grounded foundation that supports the communication through these elevated opened bodies with high intelligence on board. And it is can be expressed through our individuality, it can be expressed through our uniqueness, and that is the tapestry that is like delicious in the way of how we can create a new experience for ourselves now that we know so much more. Yes, it is really hard to think about these sort of big sensationalized kind of, the world is parting, or, ascension is happening. Um, we are going to another world is happening now. And it's like, it's not that big. We don't say, we gotta, it's very subtle. And in the subtleties, it is enormous. In the subtleties, like again, if you sit long enough, if you bring your attention and your breath into anything, if you're looking at anything or anyone long enough and sit there long enough, you're going to go through the dimension. You're going to see what is revealing over and over again. It's going to reveal itself and reveal itself and reveal itself. It's like the onion peeling, right? And that is why the touch is the same thing. There's so much intelligence in the touch. There's so much that is transmitted through the touch. Um, And when we start to come on board and learn a little bit more about our own individual map, map, um, because it's a language. You know, we all have very particular maps, just like fingerprints. You know, we have particular maps in how this information organizes in us, and so we got to know what we got to get familiar with that. So everyone can touch the same thing. Like if we're sitting in a circle and there's a sand or there's a rock or there's an animal or there's another person, and we are just all putting our hands in the field or actually touching the person or the thing, the object. We're touching the same thing, but we are not perceiving it the same. It's not, the information organizes itself uniquely to your own map, your own blueprint. And because this is how its experiences gets to be um, stored in the data, stored in our human experience, because we all have to have unique ways in how we experience form and connection and touch. It can't be the same because evolution wants to have all these unlimited experiences and shapes. So I always say, have the experience, have the experience, have the experience within your capacity, what you can, what you're capable of, and then go a little bit more, like just a little bit more, so that there's a, stretch a little bit more, but, at least keep one foot in where you're capable of, where you have ground. We have to have ground, right? You have to know where you are now so that you know where you're going, because this is the thing, and that's true and it's not true, because it depends on where you are sitting in yourself, what aspect of your consciousness you're accessing. Because if you're looking, like, if are you on the big spectrum, or are you sitting in the micro spectrum of it, of course that makes a difference. But for practicality here, for us to go into uh, a deeper understanding of our own language, of our, like, non-linear language, non-contextual, like non-mental structured language. Um, so it's a holistic, symbolic, organic communication that's happening all the time. All the time. This is not something that we are inventing. This is not something that we are um, building. We're building strength in the connections. We're building strength in the awareness of it. We're cultivating the awareness of that, but it's already here. It's happening all the time, and that's the awakening. Are we sort of awake, aware of it? And the more we're aware of it, the stronger it gets, because where life, where your awareness goes, life goes, and where life goes, your awareness goes. So it keeps, so that's what I mean. It opens up more energy for you. Okay, sometimes I do, I talk in circles, and he's like, can you come back to the point? Like, how you want to come back to, like, what's your point here? And I wanted to come back because there was so much coming out, and I don't even know sometimes how it's going to come out, because it's like I just feel it sitting here, and it's like, oh, not until I start talking, I just see, like, oh, wow, okay. And I have very limited vocabulary. So sometimes I talk about, what something looks like, as far as, if I talk in light language. I don't right now, because I'm trying to articulate this. Um, um, and symbolically, it's not coming on board. Like for sometimes I would speak in symbolism, but I want to make it really practical for my own understanding as well. And so it's accessible to more people. When I am sitting one on one with a person, I know a little bit how that person, where they're plugged in, and then where they're plugged in, the language then adjusts itself to that person. So I meet them where they are, whether if they're just really science-based or really opened up into a language that encompasses an ecstatic consciousness, so that then it's almost like, I talk about twilight language is more sort of the word that I use instead of light language. It's more like, for me, it's like I call it twilight language, because it has a lot of symbolism in it. Um, but the bottom line is, um, how we are actually working with touch is so important. So basically, so let's end this now, because I just wanted to offload what I was seeing now, and hopefully it makes some kind of sense. But the big thing is, a lot of us, and I know if you're still listening to this, I know that we are evolving. And it's so subtle. It's so subtle because it's our consciousness that are evolving and moving the bodies into deeper and deeper access into these senses, opening up the senses, the multidimensional senses. Um, um, so we become sort of multi-sensory, but it's not even multi-sense because it's one sense. It's where we are going. It's just like our one sense. It's like our vision. We have a particular spectrum, but it's vision. We have one vision. We don't have night vision as much. We don't have the expanded vision. So there's certain frequencies we don't see at this point, but we don't see because our eyes sees. We see because our consciousness, that's seeing, has created our eyes to see. So the more we open up in that consciousness, the more it actually moves our biology into these, it opens up and activates these potentials that are in our biology to actually open up the spectrum. And we already know, as body workers, as light workers, you already know that there's senses that you are working with all the time. And I think, if I had to end the conversation here today, it's about, when you communicate or someone communicate with you and they're touching you, plug into that, because what they're saying can be very limited to what they're saying through their touch, because that is the truth. How they're touching, are they consciously touching, are they unconscious, are they are they not connected, or are they in their truth, are they in their breath, are they in integrity, are they considering you, are they asking for consent in the sacred sort of reciprocity way, meaning are they present, with you and your field, to have to know, to listen? Are they listening? Are they moving in a way where they are so present to you, and are you present to them? um so that like, so you practice for yourself also, when you're touching someone, you feel in, watch where their hands are, watch where your hands are. um so that's really important. Now we know, like, I, for example, have a child with some mental health disabilities, and so I know when he was growing up, it was just he didn't know that he didn't have those boundaries, and his hands were everywhere. everywhere. That's how he was, and he was, tracking everything that his hands would try. So his hands were everywhere, and that's how he was, and most kids, that's first, like they want to feel everything, texture, everything. But, there's a certain point where that kind of comes into the brain, and the brain starts to process with the eyes and the mouth, and you start to talk, and you start to, but it took a long time for him to have that transition, a developmental transition. And so, there was a lot of times where the hands were all over the place and not appropriate. Didn't know, and so, and with himself too, didn't know, didn't have natural boundaries. And so, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not saying, I have no idea when it comes to all these different states of psychological development, and the depth and the vastness of information that you can learn and read on that, because there's a whole, of course, it's a whole psychology around all that. But I'm just saying as an example of, where we see that, and we can see that if a person hasn't gone through maturation, hasn't gone through natural development, and haven't digested experiences in the felt sense in the body, you might see these behaviors that might not be appropriate. And if you are looking at coming into a deeper dialogue with touch yourself, then I encourage you to do so. I encourage you to do so, because it is important for us to do that, to free up that energy, that dormant energy, if you're not using it a lot, and to be able to transcend it into a higher consciousness, which is your consciousness. But yeah, so that's it. So when we talk about, you have to heal your life, you have to feel your life. And I feel like feeling and touch is the first thing, the first sense that this body, this form, was developed. Touch happened through sound. Sound touched us in when we were just, a fetus. I mean, like the sound waves started touching us. I mean, touch was the first thing. And so touch, there's this, um, yeah, there is this guidance back to really awakening in touch, because we are being touched all the time, by whatever, all the frequencies that are in and around us now in the atmosphere. We are being touched all the time. And if we don't understand what's touching us and how we are affecting the field by our touch, um, sometimes we can be in a lot of poo, so to speak. All right, I'm going to stop right here. So thank you again. I hope, and I hope that any of this makes sense. I wish for us to just continue, opening ourselves up for the discovery, to being present with our own unfoldment, to know that we are descending into our deepest nooks and crannies and our deepest intelligence, and that when we are doing that, that's our transcendence, that we are transcending any of that, because when we touch anything in those deeper layers of the human experience, we are transcending it. And so we yeah, and we are called to do this together. We are called to connect, to ourselves and each other, to entrain this beautiful consciousness that is really wanting to come into existence through our breath, through our touch, through our goodness, and through, our free will. We'll heal it. We just have to know that that's what we're doing. All right. So much love here, so much love here. Until next time, Ombute Devi. Bye for now.